So, once again, I'm halfway, well, I'm like a quarter of a way into a project, and I realized, you know, I should probably shoot a video on this, just for content for my channel, and it should be kind of a cool project. So every year I go up to beautiful Wolfsboro, New Hampshire to visit a friend of mine who is on Lake Winnipesaukee, and every year we take fishing rods up with us because I love to go fishing. We pack the car pretty tight, dogs, what have you, junk, car's packed really tight. And I made a fishing rod holder. But I made it out of wax canvas. And two things. One is, it's way too big. It's way too big, and it really provides little to no protection for the fishing rods. Pretty much none. So I actually take a bunch of rods up with me. The reality of it is I take 4 rods, and these are kind of delicate. A couple ugly sticks which are cheap, but I have 2 other ones here that are actually kind of expensive rods. I don't want to get them damaged. So I went to Home Depot and I bought a piece of Schedule 40 PVC. Now, I could just glue a cap on this end, glue a screw cap on this end, screw a plug in the end of it, done deal. Why would I want to do that? You know, that's just too simple. Let's make a case. First thing first, this Schedule 40 PVC is way too heavy for what I'm doing. It's completely useless. Unless, for whatever reason, we decide we want to fly somewhere, and then we could do that. The other thing I didn't do, and I probably should have done, was put padding on the inside of this thing, but you know, that's too much like effort. So what I did was I made a plug out of plywood, because I have plywood laying around. It just cut it out on the bandsaw, measured it, you know, cut it out on the bandsaw, sanded it to size, press fit it in. The other thing I did was, before I press fit it in, is I have this, I don't know what it is, neoprene or some kind of padding stuff that I bought at craft store. EVA. It was on sale, so it has like this weird shape on it, but I don't care. It was cheap. This stuff was on sale for like, it was 20 bucks for a sheet, which is actually pretty cheap for this stuff. I put a piece on the inside on the plywood, so when I put a rod in here, it doesn't bang into the bottom. And then I put a piece on the bottom of this, so the bottom's kind of protected. Now, I just glued the plywood's glued in with a combination of CA glue and the adhesive that I used to contact adhesive to hold it in the bottom. It ain't going nowhere. And it was pushed in pretty tight, so it was a force fit. It was a force fit into the. It was a force fit into the base here, so it's not coming out. It's not going anywhere. And then, like I said, I put this little pad on the bottom to protect the edge of the PVC, or to protect the PVC. Nothing worse than a dull razor blade. Now, like I said, I could have just went to Depot, put a plug in the bottom of this, or put a cap on the end, and then put a screw cap in here. A lot of guys do that. You know what? Not for nothing. It looks a little ghetto. Well, I should have used. I think it's called Schedule 20. it's used for drain pipe. It's not, it doesn't have to hold any pressure. It's about half the thickness of this stuff, the Schedule 40, and it's perfectly suitable. This particular product's pretty heavy. The Schedule 40 is pretty heavy. I don't plan on carrying this thing anywhere. Worst case scenario is if we were to maybe go somewhere on a fishing trip. And even then, I would probably be tempted to just go buy a cheap ass fishing rod. When I'm there. I'm not like totally married to my fishing rods, unless we were to drive. If we were to fly, I would probably just buy a fishing rod wherever it is that I'm going. So I just want to trim this off. The real reason I'm doing this is I have another project for this material that I've got here. But I thought it would be I thought that the fishing rod holder would be a pretty cool thing to do. So this is 500 weight Kodura, whatever. Yeah, it's Kodura. I don't know how you say it properly, but that's what this is. The Bernina will sew this. This is actually part of this is also part of it. The Bernina will sew this material, and it will sew with this V69 thread. But it doesn't like it. So I'm gonna move the camera and I'm gonna show you exactly what I got going on here. Now, I don't think it'll show up on camera, but it's kind of vitally important to what's going on here. You'll notice that the thread, this is the top of the stitch. Top of the stitch looks nice, but the bottom of the stitch looks terrible. So the reason it looks terrible is because this machine with this bobbin carrier does not like to run this V69 thread, which is right here. So this V69 thread is very thick stuff. It's designed specifically for heavy duty upholstery. It runs beautifully through my Sailrite. And I probably could do this whole, I can do this whole project with the Sailrite, but I wanted to use the Bernina for a couple reasons. One is the Bernina gives me some different thread options, or some different stitch options that the Sailrite does not give me. The other is I actually had to sew my Easy Up back together because when I went to New Hampshire, I didn't take the Easy Up down, and it collapsed and ripped, and I'm sick and tired of buying Easy Ups. Well, Easy Ups are super duper thin material. Not for nothing, but the Sailrite just doesn't like to sew that stuff. It gets all bunched up and acts silly. So to sew that, to use this heavy thread, I have a special bobbin case. Okay, so this is the bobbin case for my Bernina, and I have 3 bobbin cases for it. I've got one that is designed for, that's set for just regular thread. It's set for regular, good old-fashioned thread, and whatever the thickness of regular thread is. So this one is for regular, just good old-fashioned thread. I marked it. So this is if I'm just sewing stuff, I use this one. This one is for embroidery, and then this one is for this crazy heavy stuff. The Bernina is a hell of a machine. It'll sew this 500 weight Kodura probably 5 or 6 layers thick before it starts to choke. It'll also sew, well, you're gonna see it. It'll sew pretty much anything you ask it to, up till like it gets into craziness. So you just drop this thing back in here. When I first bought this machine, I may or may not mentioned in one of my other videos how this was a bit of it was very upsetting when I brought the machine home and it wouldn't sew. So I went back and I talked to the girl that worked at the store, and she fixed it for me at Hayes Sewing Machine Company. Stephanie, I think her name was, and she fixed it immediately. I've actually jammed this machine up pretty good too one day. That's when I bought the Sailrite. The day I jammed this machine was the day I bought the Sailrite. But I jammed it, and I earned that jam. Okay, so you just put that thing back in there, and then so I'm going to put this back to default, so the bernette is pretty cool because it's got it'll tell you it was set at 375 is what it was set at, because it was lit up to let you know that you changed it. So I have a bobbin already spun up here. I had actually already done this, so we're gonna pop that open. This is the little stylus that comes with the machine. I probably shouldn't be using it for this. Oops. Oh, there we go. Pop that out, get that out of the way, and then we'll. Gonna have to be gentle with this machine, unlike the Sailrite, which I could just abuse the piss out of because it's made for it. Put that in there. Now, hopefully. I was hoping I could do it just by pushing the button. Apparently I have that disabled. So use the foot treadle here. The last thing I sewed with this machine was my bowling shirts. Okay, so now I still need to tighten this up, so we're gonna, it needs to be tightened up a good bit, so I'm gonna go for 6. I love the thread cutter. It doesn't always work great. So there we go. I tightened that up pretty good. I'm gonna go a little bit more. I'm gonna probably go with a full 750 here. Could probably go a little more, which is a problem. 850. Still loose. I'm going to loosen that up a little bit more, I think. You shouldn't fiddle You shouldn't fiddle with these. If you don't know what you're doing, you should not, I repeat, not fiddle with your bobbin cases. It's just not a good idea. Unless you have spares. I've got spares, so I fiddle with mine. So there's a little screw here on the side, little itty bitty teeny tiny screw, which I have to get a special screwdriver for. So I have this special little screwdriver. It's the kind that you use on eyeglasses and things. I don't want to run this with the thread tension all the way up. So you just take this screw, I back this screw out half a turn, and what it does is it puts tension on that little spring in there. So drop this back in. These are very delicate. You have to be very careful with them. It's not like the old school metal ones where you could be a little bit more manly with them. I broke one of these already doing dumb stuff. Let's put that back in here real quick. Spin this. Okay, very carefully. I'm not going to put the screws back in it because I'm going to just live dangerously here. This is a great way to break a needle by not holding this down. We've also got too many threads going here. Shit. I'm a little cheap here with my material because I have another project. So the fishing rod holder isn't the project here. The fishing rod holder is just to get the machine straightened out. My actual project is I want to make some covers for my friend's boat. He has a bimini top on his boat that, for whatever reason, the manufacturer of the bimini top and the boat have the bimini top, so when the bimini is down, it rests on the interior of the boat, and you don't want that. So like if you want to run the boat with the bimini down, the bimini cover actually can damage, it has damaged the gel coat on the boat, and worse, the interior. So what I'm actually building here, there we go, perfect. I might bump that up just a little bit more. We're back to 8. I'm gonna go 825. I'm gonna really give it the business. So what I'm looking at is the knots, making sure the knots pulled all the way through. Like I said, I'm pushing the limits of this machine doing this, but I like this machine for this type of project because it gives me different thread options or different stitch options that the Sailrite just doesn't give me. I'm going to call that good. Okay, so now let's go back to where I was. So we're going to put this back together, and I'm going to explain the rest of what I got built, what I got going on here. I'm going to have to thread another bobbin too. I got a lot of sewing to do today. So basically the whole reason that I whipped out the bernina was to actually to sew the, or bernette, I'm sorry, to sew the Easy Up because of the material that the Easy Up is made out of. But while I'm here, I might as well use it to sew up those covers for Adam's boat. And we're gonna do those too, but that's gonna be a different video. All right, now let's move the camera again. So, where were we? Oh, all right. So I have this material. This is my offcut, which we're gonna save because we need to make a lid for it too. So the first thing I did was I measured the diameter of this, which is 4.5 inches, multiplied I added an inch, so it made it 5.5 inches. I multiplied 5.5 inches by pi, and I got the width that I needed. To make sure that my measurements were correct, I wrap this. I have a 1 inch overlap. So hopefully when I go to sew this thing together, I'm gonna have the perfect, it'll fit perfectly around there. I want that super duper tight because I am gonna actually glue this material to the inside. Now, the other thing is my tube is 44 inches long. I cut the piece of material at 48 inches long. Why did I cut the piece of material at 48 inches long? Because I want to have an overlap. I want to be able to, once I sew this into a tube, I want to be able to tuck this in here to give the material, to give this edge a nice finished look. So what I'm doing right now is I'm hemming this edge. Before I clip this, I put this basting tape in here, which the bernina does not like the basting tape, but oh well. And I'm gonna do 2 stitches here. I'm gonna do one at about 1/4 of an inch. 7/8. Fudge. I've already screwed it up. No, that's okay, it should work. So my first stitch is going to be at 7/8. Hold it straight. I'm going to do 2 here. Slow this thing down. I'm running it real slow because I haven't sewed with this machine in a while, and not for nothing, this machine can really, this machine sews way faster than I can control it. And I don't have the foot pedal in a very good spot, so quite frankly I've got 2 speeds, on and off. So I'm taking my good old time here. I'm in no rush, I got nothing better to do. The other thing I got to be careful is I don't hit my these clips here, because I don't want to break a needle. Changing needles on this machine is relatively easy, but let me be honest with you, the needles are in the house. And I'm just going to back up a little bit, and then we're going to cut, and then we'll cut. I love this machine with the automatic thread cutter. This machine does a couple things that I really like. The automatic thread cutter is one of them. The other thing it does is it has a needle threader, which is really nice. Now I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to put another stitch on here. This one's going to be at like 1/4 of an inch. Actually, we're going to do 3/8. If you use the needle cut, if you use the thread cutter, it will start. It'll make a knot, which is really nice. Oops. It'll make a knot, which is real nice at the beginning and the end. Reversal here, and then we'll cut. Okay, so I got a nice little hem here. Okay, so it looks nice. That knot's still not quite right, but I'm not gonna fight with it anymore. All right, now next step. So I should make it pretty clear here. I actually don't have a pattern for this project. As a matter of fact, I'm just pulling this out of my ass. I actually have a rod holder that is I got for my fly rod literally a decade ago, or probably 30 years ago. That's made out of a similar material. So what I did here was, this is the back side of the material. I folded it in half. Alright, folded it again. Now, granted, this end here is going to be long. There's a 1-inch seam allowance. So if I wanted to get fancy, I could roll this up a little bit, but that I don't want to do that. So we're just going to mark this here with a little bit of chalk. Actually, on the back side, you can use Sharpie. So that should mark the center of the piece here. Alright, now the next thing I want to do is, I got this strapping here. I don't know what it is. Oh, 100% polypropylene. Okay. Polypropylene floats. So what I want to do is, I'm going to make a handle, but I want it to be kind of fancy because I'm a fancy man. This strapping, a buddy of mine gave me. It's blue. It's blue. I have no use for blue. This stuff is awful to cut with a pair of scissors, especially these cheap ones. Of course, made a liar out of me. The other thing you have to do with this stuff, and I'm going to do it, is you have to finish the ends. Best way to finish the ends is to actually, I usually cut this stuff with a soldering gun, an old school Weller soldering gun. It's older than I am, and that's pretty goddamn old. So I'm going to do that and that. So we're going to put kind of a handle on this. I'm going to get a measuring tool out here. So this is the center. And this particular ruler I have here, you can use as a square. So there's a line on it that you can square this up, because this thing's pretty wide. I have an even wider one. So we're going to put a line on it here. This chalk washes off. So it's just like the stuff they use at Men's Warehouse when you go get your trousers straightened out. And I go, and then I'm going to put a little nick with the scissors. On either end here. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over. Okay, flip it over. There's my nick. I got a nick there, square on this edge. This edge is square, this edge is not. Because when I cut it, when I cut the material, I used a pair of scissors instead of my rotary cutter, because I didn't want to dig out my big rotary cutter mat to cut this, and because my glass blowing stuff is in the way, I don't have anywhere to put my sewing machine. Now, I'm just going to do a kind of a rough here. So we're going to call it 16 inches. So we're going to go 8 inches. Should give me a relatively square and straight. We're just going to snap a line in it here. Yeah, so that's 8, 16. We're going to put a line here. A line. So that's 8 inches. We're going to go 16 inches. We're going to put a line here. If you don't have one of these chalk things, I highly recommend them. Now, remember, this is kind of like a this is literally down and dirty, rough. Where this is a rough project. I shouldn't say a rough project, but this is definitely not you know, precision project here. So we're going to go, I want this on the inside of here. Okay, and then this will be on the inside of here. I'm going to get my handy dandy crack lighter out. This is not the greatest way to do this, but and yes, this stuff is lava hot. Now these are going to be buried in the joint, so they don't have to be perfect. All right. If I was doing tack gear or like a really nice bag, like I said, this is just kind of like a ghetto project. Yeah, I shouldn't even call it that. It's just this is a amuse me in my sewing machine project. All right, so that's going to go there. That's going to go there. Now we're going to put a handle in. I'm not going crazy. I'm not doing like a double, you know, I'm not doing a padded handle. I'm not doing any of that. It's just going to have a handle in it. It's going to be right there. It's going to be just like that. Cut this right about there. And give or take a little. Okay. Now we're going to burn this one back. This one back. Oops. I don't like using the lighter to do this with because it leaves little nubbins that will break a needle. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It'll break these needles. Actually, it'll break those needles pretty quickly, I should add. Now, I got some basting tape around here somewhere. There it is. This basting tape is the greatest stuff I ever found. It works really well for this stuff. Especially, I mean, the other option's pins. I have pins, but I hate pins because I inevitably end up jabbing myself with them. Every time. Now I ran the basting tape way over the end here for a reason. I'll show you that reason. So I can line this up in the center. The other reason I don't like, I was right the first time. The other reason I don't like cutting this stuff with scissors and then burning it back is because sometimes you don't get the right length. Okay, now I'm going to take some basting tape and we're going to stick it here. I have wider basting tape. I don't feel like going back in the house and getting it, so this is just 1/4 inch basting tape. All it is to hold this in place while we sew strapping in. We're going to put another piece in because I know from experience that the basting tape and this Cordura material and this stuff, this polypropylene strapping, aren't big fans of each other. Now, theoretically, I should probably get my other sewing machine out to do this. I should use the Sailrite to sew these on. And if this wasn't a down and dirty project, literally just to keep me occupied for a couple hours, I would do that. But the bernette can handle it. It might choke a little bit. I'm going to put the walking foot down to make sure I can get this to work right. I am not changing the thread color. I bought that gray thread for a reason. I'm going to cut this back. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm actually going to stop my thread. I'm going to stop my seam somewhere around in here, and I'm going to trim these back because the bernette will not sew through 4 layers of it will not sew through 4 layers of strapping without choking. What I could have done, what I should have done, was cut this off ahead of time and then left this as part of the seam allowance. But I didn't think that far ahead. Actually, I still could. Yeah, it's all right. All right, so now we have our straps and our handle in place. And then we're going to sew these together. This is the outside, I should add. All right, and again, we're back here. Sewing machine. I'm going to trim these little boogers off here. This is the basting tape overrun. You don't need in any way, shape, or form to use the basting tape. You can use pins. If I really was very worried about this, I would actually do both. I would pin it and I would I'd pin these on and baste them, but I'm not. Hopefully I can get away without doing that. Now, the Bernina has this little walking foot at the bottom. You have to make sure you have the right foot in for that too. That's kind of important. Now, like I said, I'm sewing pretty slow here. So I'm using the foot itself, the inside of the foot. I have the, oh, I forget the number of the foot, but it's a, it's the zigzag foot, but I'm using the inside of it as my thread gauge or my guide. And now I'm going to turn it. I have this set up to leave the needle in the lowered position. So I can do what I just did. Now this is going to get sewed. This is the seam. That's going to be a seam down there, so I'm not really worried about it. It's actually turning out. I really like the contrast of the gray thread on the blue. It looks really nice. This project is, I hate to use the word superfluous, but this project is actually superfluous to the actual project itself, which is making covers for Adam's boat bimini cover. And yes, I know, I'm sewing very slow. I haven't sewed anything really important, remotely important, in probably a year. So, I sewed a lot of stuff in the last, I sew pretty much once a month in some way, shape, or form. You don't realize how much you can actually do so until you start doing, it's like, oh, I need to fix this. I'm going to sew it. I have a sewing machine. All right, so I'm just going to reverse that a little. I'm going to cut it. Sneak that over to this side. The thread cutter doesn't always work with this heavy thread. Oops. Thread cutter doesn't always work with this heavy thread. As a matter of fact, it rarely works with the heavy thread, but what it does do is it tells the machine to start a knot. It tells the machine to start a knot at the beginning of the stitch. Yeah. Right. I really love this machine. This was one of my COVID purchases. I bought this thing literally at the height of COVID to find something to occupy my time with, and it worked. It worked. It occupied my time for the vast majority of the time that we were illegally and unconstitutionally locked in our homes. Okay. Oops. I should have cut that thread off, but hopefully it won't screw me. You know what? I am going to cut it off. It's way longer than I thought it was. Be very careful here. We're going to trim that little booger. Trim that little booger off. This machine will sew way, 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 way faster. Ah! What's going on there? Let's see what. Must have had a little bit of thread caught in there. It's okay. Hopefully it didn't screw anything up. We'll check the back side. I'm going to end this one a little differently than I did the other one. Thought I ran out of thread. Let's check this and make sure it's not screwed up. Yeah, so that's what it did. It picked up the bobbin thread. That's okay. It happens. It's all part of it. That's crooked. Come on. This actually has this machine has a multi-function foot pedal, and it'll raise and lower the pressure foot from the machine, or from the treadle. Except I got big feet and I have a tendency to it doesn't do what I want it to do. So when I need to raise and lower my pressure foot, I do it from the button on the front of the machine. Now, for style purposes, I'm gonna reinforce this. Fudge. There's a way to do a half thread or half stitch with this machine. This thing's not super duper heavy, so I'm not gonna go crazy. As I go crazy. See, I should have, over-ambition got the best of me on that one. The one interesting thing about this machine, as opposed to the Sailrite, is this machine will operate with a much shorter thread coming out of the needle. Now that I said that, I'm going to screw up, I guarantee it. But I make a lot of weird stuff like this. It's just like sewing for guys kind of thing. Jason of All Trades, who I watch a lot. This is what he does. It's like sewing for men kind of thing. Which is ironic because I also make clothes and stuff too. In one of my other videos, I have some shorts that I made which don't fit. I actually literally just threw them away out of shame because they wouldn't even fit my son, who's actually much larger than I am. They just didn't fit anybody, to be honest. They were just not, they didn't turn out as I wanted. I'll probably never do pants again unless I had to. Pants are not something that think I want to be bothered with. And shorts or pants. Alright, now. Yes, I'm just sewing backwards. Now this stuff has a pretty decent stretch to it. We're gonna explain that in a second, because we want to make this super duper tight over I want to make it super duper tight over top of the tube. Like, I want to actually have to force this thing down on the tube, maybe even with a little heat. I don't have any of the adhesive that I used left over. I have some, but I don't think I have, I have some and I'm going to use it, but I don't really have enough. All right, now we sewed the handle on. Now I'm going to take and cut these back a little bit. Get rid of this. And basting tape is some funny stuff. I love it and hate it at the same time because it comes off when you don't want it to. Alright, now, before we go too far, we're going to wrap this around the tube here. This way. And we're going to establish our seam allowance. Because like I said, I want this thing super tight. Like super duper, shove it on with an incredible amount of force tight. So it won't come off. And I'm going to glue it. So it's going to have like two different things going on. So definitely going to have to, you know, I might not have to trim that. What I'm going to end up having to do is, okay, so now let's just get a measuring tool out here. Now I had given myself 1 inch of seam allowance, and it looks like 1 inch is going to be the trick. All right. Now I'm not going to trim these. We're going to do something different with these. It doesn't matter because I can trim them later because I left plenty. There's enough room here to trim it if I have to, which I'm probably going to have to, but I'm not going to do it till after I sew it. So now, see if I can get, perfect. Trim off my little strings here. Spend more time trimming strings than anything else. Now we're going to double clip this. We're going to do two things with this. We're going to use, we're going to use basting tape. I'm going to put the basting tape down just a little bit because that'll make it. Awesome. Now I have a roller that I use to make sure this basting tape sticks, which I'm going to employ in a second here. I wish I had a little bit more room. I should be doing this over on my other table, which is actually my table saw. But we're not going to do that. I think I can pull this off. Alright, so now we're going to fold this over like this. And I can't reiterate enough that this project itself is purely, this is purely a lark. Purely a lark. And it's something I actually have wanted to do for a long time. Oh, you know what? Nah. Alright, so that's going to be a trick. I am going to, I don't want to say I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to close this with a cap. I'm going to make a cap and then just put Velcro on the cap. Now, this sewing machine has, and you're going to see it, this thing comes off and I can sew, for sewing sleeves and things. That's pretty close. I know that this my roller out. I know that this one edge is not straight. It drives me nuts that I did it that way, but like I said, this is kind of a lark. I do wish it was a little straighter. Alright, now I'm going to put magic clips on it too. This is redundant. This is redundant and doesn't need to be done. At least I don't think it does. But it never hurts to have a little extra. Never hurts to have a little extra holding. These magic clips are probably another one of those things that I'm so glad I found. Another thank you to Stephanie at Hayes Sewing Machine for turning me on to them. Really should get back down there and buy some material from them. They have, but I don't really need anything. And it's not a hike. It's definitely not a 5-minute ride. And they don't sell, they sell specialty stuff, but they don't sell like the crazy shit that I use. Sadly, Joanne does though. And Sailrite. Sailrite's actually the best place to get that stuff. Okay, so now we put our magic clips in here. Ironically, I built a camera mount for my glass blowing stuff, which would work perfectly for this, but oh well. Alright, so we're going to do every bit of 1 inch of a seam allowance here. And again, I'm going pretty slow. Because break anything. I also don't want to go too crazy. I just don't want to go too crazy. You can get so far out of whack so quickly. For me, as a beginner, you know, like really quickly. And when you're doing something where you got to make it fit over top of something else, you really don't want it to get screwy. And actually, I can see it's actually kind of screwy, but hopefully we'll get it right the first time. If not, you can always make it a little tighter. Tighter is easier. Tighter is easy. Loose means I got to get the seam ripper out, and this material that I'm using is actually waterproof, and once you poke a hole in it, once you poke a hole in this stuff, you're married to it. But it doesn't matter, other than it doesn't matter. This isn't, I'm not making something waterproof. All I'm doing is hiding a piece of PVC pipe, for Christ's sake. All right. Always put your magic clips back in the thing and put the lid on, because they're expensive and I inevitably lose them. Now for the big reveal. Does it fit? And is it too loose? I'm going to end up taking this thing apart again. What I'm going to do here is flip this thing right side out. Hopefully this will go relatively smoothly. I do love glass blowing. I do love woodworking, blah, blah, blah. Sewing is another one of those things. I just really like doing it. It feels so accomplished. Glass blowing is an art that I'll never master. Sewing is something I think I can get pretty good at relatively quickly. Or I got relatively decent at it quickly. I'm not saying that there isn't art to sewing, because there is, but sewing is very much like woodworking in that it's... Okay, now let's hopefully this thing goes... we have to fight to get this on. That's my game plan, is to have to fight to get this thing on here. That's what I want. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna round this off. I don't want to rip it. It's tight.